welcome back to another Conversations with Kate. I'm very thrilled today to be joined by the two student representatives to our Melrose School Committee, both seniors at Melrose High School. And I'll pause here just so you can each introduce yourselves briefly, maybe just share your name and maybe a little bit about how things have been going this year at the high school.
Hi, so I'm Morgan Kirby. As you said, I'm a senior and I've been loving senior year. It's been fun, happy. Everyone's back in person and we get to see everyone.
That's great. And Ruby, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, sure. Hello, my name is Ruby Robichaud. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm also a senior with Morgan. And going back, it's been great going back to school and being able to see everyone.
Right. So I'm so grateful for both of you spending a little time with me over the holiday break as we prepare for a new year and your final semester of education in the Melrose Public School systems. And I know that people who are listening at home will really benefit from hearing from you all a little bit about what that's been like to go to high school during a pandemic, and also a little bit about your perspective and leadership serving on the Melrose School Committee. So maybe let's start a little bit there, and then we'll turn to what it's been like during the pandemic. So both of you stepped up and stepped forward to be representatives of the student body for the Melrose School Committee, and what a time to be doing that, as obviously our schools have been dealing with so many things, and you've had a front row seat to sort of listen in on those conversations and provide insights. So can you talk a little bit about what motivated you to fill this role, and a little bit about what your perspective, what it's been like to be a representative this year? Do you want to start, Ruby?
Yeah, sure. So what really made me want to step up was like ensuring quality education throughout in the curriculum, so that people, like, despite like a pandemic, are still getting the same quality of education, as well as like new different topic, or like as well as different topics of like to incorporate, such as like social justice, given that's adding more of a stress because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
As for like serving on the school committee during the pandemic and during COVID, it's definitely interesting to hear about the different processes that people are having to take in order to ensure safety, whether it be like more like spending more on transportation because of increased bus costs, or hearing about how like there are elementary school like volunteers helping with making sure that elementary students are socially distanced during lunch. It's been very great. It's been nice hearing how the community is really supporting each other.
Thank you. That's really great to hear. I'm really appreciative. You may know that I'm a former 7th grade teacher. And so thinking about the types of classes you could take, or what the classes are focusing on, and ensuring they're high quality and also really relevant to the challenges of today, including with respect to racial justice, really resonates with me. So I'm really glad to know that you've been able to voice those priorities through your leadership role. Morgan, what about you? What inspired you to want to be a representative to the school committee, and what has it been like for you doing that?
Yeah, so I joined because first I wanted to see how all these decisions were made. Like, you hear all about it on the news that the school committee just decided this, and I wanted to see what the reasonings that they choose all this. And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and I also wanted to be able to give a student's perspective and give a little impact to the school. So it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. Yes, it's neat to hear you both talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure you experience this in your own decision making, and it's probably reinforced by watching some of the deliberations where, to your point, Ruby, there are considerations around costs, sort of the financial picture. You've got obviously changing circumstances around health and safety for students. Obviously, there are advancements in the ways you could deliver curriculum, which we've had to explore by necessity during the pandemic, but maybe we've also found out some really great tools and resources we'd want to use moving forward. So certainly having a front row seat to all of that, I'm glad to hear has been a rewarding and positive experience for you. So beyond just being student representatives, you're also students full-time at Melrose High School, and you have been throughout the pandemic. So I'm thinking, if I'm got my math right, you were sophomores. It was your second semester of your sophomore year when everyone was sent home. And then for your junior year, I'm expecting you spent a significant amount of that fully remote. And now, as you both referenced, being back in school for your senior year, and I'm so glad you get to do that. But maybe talk a little bit about that. And, we suggested maybe structuring it a bit like a flower metaphor, right? We're entering the winter. We don't see them yet, but we know they're going to be back. And so thorns, roses, and buds. So a thorn would be, what's a challenge that you experienced? And maybe if you prefer to reference just a challenge more broadly beyond just your own personal challenge, but something challenging that occurred during the pandemic for students. Maybe a rose, sort of a success, something that was actually positive during the pandemic for students. And then a bud, which would be a future opportunity, maybe something we've learned from the pandemic that would be really important and helpful for students moving forward. So would one of you, I don't want to kick someone, but who wants to start and give us a little bit of insight, a firsthand perspective of being a high school student over 3 years now during a pandemic? You want to go first, Morgan, this time?
Yeah, sure. So, thorn of the pandemic was certainly the having to do school virtually. I'm someone who really likes the social aspect of school. I like seeing everyone and getting to see my friends and talk to them. But I did hybrid last year, so that was kind of a rose, like getting to see everyone again, and loved being back in the class. Bud, for the future opportunity that I'm looking forward to, with us all back, we all see senior year opportunities like internships and all that. I'm really looking forward to getting to do that, and I'm doing it at an elementary school in Melrose. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
Very excited for that.
That's really great. When will that start?
That starts, so in the high school we do it by quarters. So the third quarter will end in March. So beginning of April, most seniors will get to go on an internship.
Very good. That's great. What about you, Ruby? What are some real, challenges from COVID, maybe some actual positive experiences, and then something promising for the future?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I was fully remote like the whole entire time because my dad's immunosuppressant. So coming back like the first for senior year, like it was very exhausting, like to come back to like full classes and like throughout the whole day. So that was definitely an adjustment. Rose is like just like overall, like I feel like our school has taken like a lot of safety precautions. Like we have group testing that's available every week on Wednesdays to ensure like everyone's safe and like in terms of COVID. And then as well as there's like the administration is like overall very thoughtful as to like how things like normally run, and then as well as ensuring safety, so that like we were able to have our prom this year or last year, which was a nice success. And then a bud, something that I'm looking forward to is probably just like being able to not have to like worry about like the pandemic as much, and then maybe graduating.
Yes, of course. Well, you're definitely graduating, so that's exciting. Both of you, I know, are doing really great. And we talked a little bit about future plans, and I know you're finishing up applications and weighing decisions, and that's very exciting for you and your classmates. One thing that, Ruby, you've mentioned a few times, and Morgan, obviously in your own remarks as well, is just the attention that's had to be on safety, on physical safety, protecting yourselves, protecting your families. What has that been like as students? What do you think the impact may have been? Maybe not on you necessarily personally, but just more broadly with your friends and your social networks around sort of mental health as well, because we've been so focused on being physically safe, but obviously we hear a lot about how it's really created a struggle for mental well-being, and that's certainly true for me and for my generation. But in some ways, you all have missed out on more of the sort of rites of passage, and so what have you heard from your friends or in the school building just around how your peers are doing emotionally and mentally right now? Any insights into that or thoughts?
So when the pandemic started in like last year when we were fully remote, I know a lot of the students and my friends, their mental health really went down because they couldn't see anyone. I know a lot of kids, some were doing great in classes, other ones who would usually do great were not getting the grades they wanted because it was just so hard to learn virtually. And
Yes.
I know a lot of kids now with everyone back and school getting to as normal as possible, their mental health is getting better, but I think, yeah, it really took a toll on a lot of students.
Yes.
As for the remote community, when there was like a split between like people staying remote and then also people returning hybrid, I know like our remote teachers, like we had like a lot of conversations about our mental health, and like teachers really stepped up as to like forming like a tight-knit community, like, and knowing that like we could reach out to them, and then like being more used to talking about like mental health and like how you're feeling emotionally. I think like that doesn't happen as much during school. So that was like a new shift there. And then as for returning, I think overall, I don't know how the morale is overall, but I feel like things are more smooth, I suppose.
Okay. I like your term shift. I was thinking the same thing. And I wonder if that could be a bud moving forward, where because everybody experienced the pandemic and it understandably impacted everybody emotionally and mentally in some ways, it made the stigma of talking about that less of a thing, because we all could talk a little bit about how it impacted us. But perhaps there's a bud in that moving forward, even as we come out of a pandemic, hopefully, maybe this will be the last wave we experience. Maybe it will sort of remove that stigma in some ways moving forward, even if we're not all experiencing a pandemic, but people will feel more supported and empowered to share, a mental struggle that they're having. That would certainly be something wonderful that could come out of a really challenging time. And I'm really glad to hear how responsive the administrators and your educators have been in making space for that. That's really encouraging to hear. So maybe we'll turn to the last topic of our conversation, which is just around, you all step forward to think about ways to bring student perspective to the school committee. And that's so critical when we're thinking about any number of ways in which policy is made, whether it's at the local level, the state level, even the federal level. And so any thoughts that you could share about how we sort of continue to elevate student voice when we're thinking about policies that we might be implementing for a K through 12 school setting that's going to impact you a lot, and sort of what advice do you have for adults about how to make partnerships with youth and ensure that you all are part of the decision-making process?
Okay, I guess I can go. In terms of like serving on the school committee, I think a couple of the things that have come up like repeatedly is like mostly like transparency and communication, and like trying to make sure that the purpose and intentions behind decisions are like put in the forefront of discussions, and like in some cases, like if that doesn't happen, I think like it can like blow up so that it's not like the intentions and the purpose is not clear. So like going back, like I think one of the things that happened with like superintendent, like the media ran with the idea that Superintendent Kuchenberger was canceling Halloween, like in quotations. However, like once like someone explained that like on Halloween, people's like or like elementary schoolers, like their attendance for that day specifically dropped because kids didn't want to go to school because they couldn't dress up for like either like cultural or like familial reasons, like, and that the drop in attendance was like one of the main like factors going into that decision, as well as like surrounding districts, like that's typical, like dressing up itself is like not typical when going to school on Halloween. So I'd say like transparent communication there, as well as like having like more. And then like the other thing is like being able to have like the opportunity to educate on like decision making and stuff like that, as well as like accessibilities to be able to come to the table of decision making. So like in terms of like Principal Merrill and make in terms of like the mascot and like the mascot change, like I think a lot of students, I think like student voice could be more like involved there, and it has like more potential to be involved, but like some of the meetings that were held were at like 7 p.m. at the school, so like it was like not easy to access for students, as well as like integrating like big decisions like into like pre-existing structures within the school, like to increase participation. So like at school we have like a flex block, so or like a crew block where everyone like can talk about different decisions there. And then like finally like mostly like surveys, and like is not like, in my opinion, like surveys are not the same as collaboration, because like in terms of collaboration, like you can like really have like a conversation and make sure like people's opinions are heard and like felt heard, feel like they're being heard. But like with surveys, it's more of like an input output thing where decisions, yeah. So
those are all really great points and helpful for me to reflect on. And I think for anyone listening to think about, each one of those is really useful. And just by way of virtue of the last one, you know, a survey, to your point, is sort of input output is a good way to look at it. And it also is in some ways only as good as the survey instrument itself. And that's more a reflection of the person asking the questions and less of the person responding. And, you know, so really good points around collaboration being more about providing time and space. And also that requires making sure we're meeting students when and where they are, the timing, the location of things. So those are all really helpful considerations. What about you, Morgan?
So I agree with Ruby that communication is a big factor and kind of key in it, because there's been a lot of issues that I know students have seen on social media or on a Facebook group or something like that, and they don't even know what's going on in the school, like they're hearing it from outside sources. So I think communicating in a good amount of detail to family is important. And with what Ruby said, I agree, the forms are not the same as actually allowing the students to go and give their opinions. I've talked to numerous students who said that either they don't pay attention to the form, because we get a lot of them, and or that they are worried about who can see the form because it's in writing, who, if they can actually give their opinion, or will it come back to.
Right.
I think, yeah, transparency and communication is key in allowing students to openly give their opinion.
That's really helpful and good for us to all to be considering. So maybe a last question for both of you is just what are you planning in your future? How do you hope to continue to make an impact for the remainder of this year? Obviously, there are some big decisions coming up, including with the mascot, and also just continuing to be responsive to the pandemic, and then prepare for some hopefully really wonderful celebrations of your 4 years at, Melrose High School. So what are you looking forward to there? And then even beyond high school, any aspirations or ways in which you'd like to continue to be leaders? Morgan, do you want to start this time?
Sure. So, yes, I'm very excited to continue on the school committee for the rest of the year. And to, Ruby and I are also in student government, so we're in charge of I'm head of the prom, all that stuff. We all get to plan it, so we're both excited on doing that, doing all the activities. And then beyond high school, it's been a great 4 years, but I want to go into elementary education, so I'm hoping to be able to continue.
Well, that'll be great. And I'm glad you'll do an internship at an elementary school this spring, right? So very good. Yes, as I mentioned, I was a 7th grade teacher, a middle school teacher, and I think that elementary school teachers need a special kind of stamina. I mean, it's delightful, but I always liked, having my students for the hour and a half and then letting them go on their way. But you'll get to really cultivate such strong relationships with students because you'll have them, all day long. And I think your energy and enthusiasm will be such a blessing to them. So best of luck in that endeavor. And I'd love to stay in touch and hear how it's going.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. What about you, Ruby?
So I'm a member of the Cultural Council. So in March, we're planning like an arts and culture summit. So I'm excited for that and like hearing more about like the cultural landscape in Melrose and like how we can strengthen that. And then additionally, an organization that I've been working for will be lobbying for an interdisciplinary climate education bill. It's H614 or S311. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some traction there. In terms of like after high school, I think I'll probably stick to like topics of like quality education, environmental, and like climate action, as well as like social justice and culture. Although I'm not like quite sure what I'm going to major in or any specific plans.
Well, you have time to make those calls, so that makes sense. On the cultural event in March, I'm thrilled that you're working with the Cultural Council and thinking about that. My next community conversation, which will be in late January, early February, where to be determined, is going to be focusing on ways in which to have a holistic new year, 2022, lifelong learning, engagement. And we're hoping to bring onto the panel someone who's really focused specifically on arts and culture, because it brings such vibrancy to our individual lives, and certainly those artists among us are such critical community partners. So it's great to hear you're working on that. And your state representative, will expect to have an email or some type of outreach from you and your peers on the bills that you just referenced in terms of your priorities to learn more about that. Climate and we're addressing our climate crisis has, such a critical, if not the most critical issue in some ways before us, since it's so existential. And so I'm glad that you're leaning in on that, as I'm sure many of the seniors and other class folks at the high school are. So I want to thank you both so much for joining me today as we're rounding out 2021 and looking with hope and resolve into 2022. I know Melrose benefits from each of you supporting the Melrose School Committee and bringing student voice and perspective to the decisions that are being made there. And I want to personally thank you for your leadership and your service, not only in that regard, but in many of the other ways in which you have referenced today, the ongoing work that you're doing. So we're so proud of you, and I'm really grateful for all of your efforts, and look forward to continuing to watch all the great things you're going to be doing. So Ruby and Morgan, have a safe rest of the holiday season, and I look forward to staying in touch. Thanks everyone for listening in on this Conversations with Kate. Be well.